rounding the turn, with or without the vaccine. We have the vaccines, they're going to be great, but with or without it, we're rounding the turn. Normal life, that's all we want, fully resuming. We want normal life to fully resume, and that's happening.
Well, breaking news regarding the coronavirus pandemic. Despite the president's assurances, the U.S. recorded its highest single-day increase in cases since the pandemic started, adding almost 80,000 cases yesterday. Almost every state is reporting some kind of rise in cases. 30 states have seen at least a 25% spike over the last 2 weeks, many of those in the Midwest. In Kansas, a positivity rate above 20% with more than 76,000 cases. And now health officials are worried about the rural areas around that state and their overwhelmed hospitals. Let's go to my colleague, MSNBC's Corey Coffin. She's in Kansas City, Kansas for us. Corey, this is a lot to take in right now. What are the concerns you're hearing there?
Yeah, we spoke with 2 doctors today as well about what they're having to deal with. They say that they're about to hit here at the University of Kansas Health Systems their 1,000th COVID patient. They think that they'll hit that before Monday. Currently, they have about 70 COVID patients in right now, and they say they are getting better at treating the actual disease, and they have fewer people in the ICU. But with that third wave, they have seen the most amount of deaths in the month of October than in the entire pandemic. So it is certainly something that is of high concern about just how high we're going to get with this third wave. And as you mentioned, these rural communities, that is where we're seeing the hot spots for Kansas and for neighboring Missouri as well, around Kansas City. Listen to what the doctors told me about their concern for medical facilities in those areas to be able to treat these patients, and then just kind of the, I guess, advice they have moving forward as we get into this third wave. Listen in.
I do believe now the spread has gotten so wide that rural areas are experiencing, even within their smaller populations, proportional percentages that cities are seeing in terms of COVID. And I'm very concerned about capacity of those areas to be able to meet that challenge.
Right now, I think my best advice is don't let your guard down. We're seeing the highest level of spread in our community that we've really seen so far. And that's pretty consistent across the region. There's a very real reason for people to stay, to keep their guard up, to stay vigilant, to do these things that we know are the best options we have right now to keep you and your family healthy and safe.
And Alex, a slightly concerning development as far as the type of patient, the demographics we are seeing, or at least the University of Kansas is seeing versus the beginning of the pandemic. They say patients are starting to skew slightly younger, and of the people who come in who have extreme symptoms, fewer and fewer of them actually have comorbidities, which is a concerning trend. I asked why might that be. They said probably likely because schools reopening, other activities happening in these rural communities, and it makes the spread likelier to younger people.
Pretty extraordinary. The 20% means 1 out of 5 Kansas residents have either been afflicted with or currently are dealing with COVID. Remarkable. Scary. Thank you. More breaking news this hour on Capitol Hill, and what might feel like an event on the sidelines of the intense campaign scene, the procedural business of pushing through Amy Coney Barrett's controversial Supreme Court nomination. NBC's Sahil Kapoor is on Capitol Hill for us. Sahil, welcome you. Let's talk about how much Democrats can slow the process, and how is this playing in this really charged electoral season?
Alex, there's very little Democrats can do in the Senate to try to slow down the process. They made several attempts yesterday to call votes to derail this nomination. That was Senator Schumer of New York who called those votes, but Republicans shot each one of them down. The bottom line in this moment is that Republicans have the votes to move forward at a breakneck pace to make Judge Amy Coney Barrett Justice Amy Coney Barrett, and they appear extremely determined to do so. There are 53 Republicans in the chamber. Just 2 of them are publicly opposed to this nomination. That's Susan Collins and Lisa Murkowski. The other 51 are in favor of it, are voting against Democratic motions, and there's nothing really Democrats can do beyond try to convince 2 more of those Republicans in just about 48 hours, when on Monday we're expected to have a final vote in the Senate to confirm this nomination and create a 6-3 conservative Supreme Court. This obviously is an issue in various election campaigns, particularly for senators like Tom Tillis in North Carolina and Joni Ernst in Iowa, who are on the Judiciary Committee that oversaw the nomination of Amy Coney Barrett. They're both strong, enthusiastic supporters of this nomination. nomination, and their opponents have said this shouldn't be happening right now in the middle of an election cycle.
Give me a sense, Sahil, of what all's at stake with a 6-3 conservative court, and give me the perspective on how contentious this entire process is.
Yeah, the stakes are really enormous, Alex, and as you can imagine, the anxieties and the nerves are running high here with Democrats gaveling in once the Senate gavelled in today, giving speeches opposing this nomination, strenuously arguing that this is not a legitimate process, given how close to an election it's happening, and given the precedent that Republicans set in 2016 not to do this when the country was much further out from an election. Let's play a little sound here. I believe we have of Senators McConnell, the Republican leader, and Senator Schumer, the Democratic leader.
Okay, so
our Democratic colleagues have tried to claim the Senate's process itself is not legitimate. We live in a constitutional republic. The legitimacy of an outcome does not depend on the feelings it provokes in politicians.
We just heard another warped, distorted, and convoluted history lesson from Leader McConnell. We know how defensive he is about the blatant 180-degree hypocritical turn he has made on Supreme Court nominations.
And there you see is a snapshot just how contentious this is, and the reason for that is a 6-3 Supreme Court would be an enormous shift, the most significant shift to the right on the Supreme Court by a single justice since 1991, when the conservative Clarence Thomas replaced the civil rights icon Thurgood Marshall. We've heard a lot about what's at stake in terms of the Affordable Care Act case going to the Supreme Court, healthcare access for 20 million people potentially hanging in the balance, Roe versus Wade, the future of that highly uncertain with a sixth conservative court. Voting rights. The Supreme Court has mostly sided with Republican lawsuits on things like mail-in ballots and curbside voting. This would provide a sixth vote to create a buffer in case one of those conservatives defects. And there are many more things, but I think I'll stop there at this moment. It just as an indication of what's at stake and how much the Supreme Court could change American life if Amy Coney Barrett becomes the next justice.
Lots to consider there. Okay, Sahil Kapoor, thank you so much. President Trump in the workplace, the new details revealed in a tell-all book by one of his former employees, and she's going to join me next with her side of the story.